Your relationships might be impacting your health a whole lot more than you think. Hi, I'm Dr. Jarek Conrad. Welcome to Healthy and Black, where I share information about the state of health for Black America across 7 categories, from emotional health to physical health. I became plant-based over 15 years ago after losing so many of my family members to chronic health issues. Now I want to help you take control of your health. Welcome to this episode of Healthy and Black. In this episode, we'll be talking about relationships and the impact that they have on your health. There has been a little bit more attention to the importance of relationships over the past couple of years, particularly since the Surgeon General put out an advisory titled Our Epidemic of Loneliness and Isolation. So let me set the stage a little bit, give you a little bit of background. In the United States, somewhere between 20 to 43% of adults over age 60 experience frequent or intense loneliness. Now that's older adults. But it's not just older adults. There's somewhere between 5 and 15% of adolescents who also experience a high degree of loneliness. And for everybody in between, we're seeing increased sense of loneliness and isolation. Fewer people are reporting having a close group of friends. In fact, the size of the average American's core social network has declined by about a third on average since 1985. So that core group is getting smaller and smaller. It's pretty shaky. About 30% of married couples in the United States report severe unhappiness about their relationship. So people are experiencing a great deal of isolation and loneliness, even when they're in the house with somebody. So why is all this stuff important? Why does it matter? Well, we know now from studies and then studies of studies, so these meta-analyses, that the quality and quantity of individual social relationships has been linked not only to mental health, but also to morbidity. So that's how often you get sick, the sicknesses, the disease, all that, as well as your overall mortality. So it's critically important. Strong relationships increase the likelihood of survival by 50%. This is regardless of age, sex, or health status. Social disconnection is at least as harmful as obesity, which we talk about a whole lot, physical inactivity. Yeah, I'm always talking about the importance of exercise, and smoking up to 15 cigarettes a day. 15 cigarettes a day. The quality of close family relationships can affect your endocrine function, your immune function, your nervous system activity. All that stuff is really linked to the leading causes of death and illness in the United States. So cardiovascular disease, infectious diseases, cancer, all that is linked to whether or not I have these strong family relationships. So think about this. These relationships affect whether I get sick in the first place and how quickly I'm able to overcome that sickness, or if I'm able to overcome that sickness at all, is all impacted by relationship. There are really 3 main categories if you want to think about the impact of relationships on your health. The first category I think about biological. So this includes the stress hormones, like cortisol, your body releases, inflammation. And we know inflammation is linked to so many chronic health issues, being isolated or just feeling like you're being isolated. So again, you got a lot of people around you, but you feel alone. You feel isolated. Causes inflammation in your body. It also affects gene expression. So, we all have these genes, but the ones that get turned off, all that's affected by, environment. A big piece of environment is your social connection. So, biology is profoundly impacted by this. So there are certain studies that have looked at just physical touch, holding hands, hugging. You can just hold somebody's hand and start to have their cortisol level go down. In another study, researchers saw that blister wounds heal substantially more slowly in couples who were just always in conflict compared to couples that were, kind, gentle, when they had conflict, they know how to manage that conflict well. So you heal faster when you're in positive relationships. So there's no question that there is a biological connection associated with relationship. Next category, your psychological health. And this is where a lot of people tend to think. I mean, you can see this. If I'm not having great relationships, or if I'm having problems with somebody in my family or friend group, you can see how that can affect you from a psychological standpoint. Relationships get at your sense of meaning and purpose. Is it just about me? Am I important to somebody? Do I matter? That's important, right? Your level of stress, how safe you feel, both psychologically and physically. Resilience, ability to get back up, bounce back from disappointment, to be resilient as it relates to these health issues that you have, these ailments. Relationship can make you heal faster. Your overall hopefulness, your sense of optimism, all that can be impacted by relationships. So when things are bad, you see mood swings, you see emotional distress in people, you see anxiety, oftentimes full blown depression. The third category is behavioral. And so this is an interesting one, behavioral. Yeah, remember your grandmother used to say, birds of a feather flock together? Yeah, grandparents knew a whole lot, right? They had a whole lot of wisdom. So in many ways, your behavior is tied to those social networks. So the degree of physical activity you get, for instance, if you have a group of friends who like to get out and do things and be physical, you're more likely to do that. If they just want to sit around and watch movies, then you're more likely to sit around and watch movies. Nutrition, the way you eat. When y'all decide to go to a restaurant, do you go to a healthier place? Do you go to not healthier place? Do you order the same kind of things? Food is such a central part of our ceremonies, our events, our experiences. Do you have a group of friends who always go for the bad stuff? Or do you have a group of friends who are health conscious, right? There's some positive or negative peer pressure that can be associated with this. Sleep in a number of ways. Number one, if you're having some conflict and it's on your mind, it's gonna be hard to sleep. You're thinking about this disagreement that you got in with your friends. From a practical standpoint, if you have friends who are night owl, they like to be on the phone or out doing things, hanging out. You're more likely to be with them. It's going to impact your sleep. Do you have groups of friends who get up early and let's go to yoga together? Let's go work out together. Or is your friend group sleeping in to the last minute they possibly can? Uh, Smoking and drinking. For a lot of people, these are social activities, right? Somebody goes out, lights up a cigarette. Somebody goes and y'all go have a smoke together, so y'all can share in that experience. Same thing with drink. A lot of people only drink when they're around their friend group, right? It's I want to fit in. I want to be a part of what we're doing. They encourage each other to indulge. Oftentimes we get drink recommendation from friends. I think about people who go to cigar bars to hang out. It's very much a social activity that's impacting health. On the other hand, if you have a group of friends, nobody smokes, you're likely going to be smoking around them, right? And whether or not you go get treatment if you are sick. It's interesting. If we have a group of friends who openly talk about getting screenings, who openly talk about health concerns that they might have, going to the doctor if something ain't right, you're more likely to do that. But if that's not a subject of your conversation, or if that's off limits, or if everybody's got this bravado that I can just deal with it, then, you're more likely to be like that. So Either the friends are influencing you or you were like that. So that's why you were drawn to this particular group of friends. Either way, you all can be going down a positive path together, or you could be going down a negative path together. It's really important to think about that. The issues that I'm talking about, they're not just, I mean, these are lifelong issues. There's a lot of research that has looked into the well-being of kids, and the research shows that when kids grow up in environments that are comforting, when they have emotionally significant relationships with their parents or close siblings, uh, they have better health profiles. Here's the key though. Not only do they have better health profiles as kids, they have better health profiles into adolescence and then further into adult. It's fascinating. So how you start matters. So think about the inverse of that. You got poor relationships. There's always conflict and bickering around the house. You're not connected with anybody. You're likely to have health issues as a young person, and those kind of follow you throughout your life unless you make some significant changes. When children have these warm, supportive home environments and they have good communication with their family, uh, even when they get these chronic health issues like asthma or diabetes or even congenital heart disease, they're able to overcome these challenges a lot faster than when the environment is negative. In one study in particular, researchers showed that even college students who had more caring parents had a lower risk of heart disease, ulcers, and other chronic health conditions up to 35 years later. 35 years later. The way you feel during your middle age years may have been influenced or likely was influenced by the relationships you had with your parents back when you were college age. That is fascinating when you think about it. So I talked about young people and older people. It's a mixed bag for older people. On the one hand, older people are in some ways more likely to experience isolation. You know, you have these mobility issues. You can't get out. You can't do things as much. People lose contact. So it could be a very challenging time for people. On the other hand, older people, like, I don't want no foolishness around me. So they're better at, here are the friends that are good for me. Here are the ones that are bad for me. I'm going to disassociate with those ones that are bad for me. I'm only going to spend my time with the ones that are good for me. And they make more of an effort to manage those relationships to make sure they're connecting with those people oftentimes than younger people, right? It matters. They know it matters. They know how they feel as a result of having those close ties. So we talked about the depth of relationships, the quality of relationships. I think it's important to think about the variety of relationships. Like, can you be connected with people who are not just like you? And you're connected with them because they think just like you and they agree with all the things you agree with. Maybe it's easier, but what are you learning? How are you growing? How are you getting better as a result of that relationship? What if you can find people who, you want to share the same core values with, but maybe see the world a little bit differently? We know that from a race standpoint, for instance, friendships are not a whole lot of diversity in them. A majority of adults, so over 60% of adults, say that most of their close friends are the same race or ethnicity as them. Think about the implication of that for broader than just your own relationships, but us as a society. It's hard to not fall for stereotypes and to have biases that impact how you relate to other people or connect with other people or make decisions regarding other people's lives. It's very, very difficult to be objective in that when you don't have meaningful connections with people who are different in that way. This is particularly true of Black people and white people. White people, 70% of white people say, look, everybody in my close network, they look just like me. 62% of Black people say, look, everybody in my close network, they look more like me. As you start to get with the Hispanic population, it's under 50%, somewhere around 47%. Asian adults, about 52%, so about half and half. Another really interesting thing about relationships is that people talk about different things. Men and women tend to talk about different things. Let me ask you, I can't get your feedback here, but let me ask you to guess. What is the main thing that women talk about in their core relationships? What is the main thing they talk about? The answer is family life. 67% of women say I discuss family life. That's the main thing that we talk about in my friendships. About 61% say their work. Those are the top two by far, family life and work. For males, the main thing that they talk about is their work, 54%, and current events, 53%. Their work and current events. In fact, when you look at combining men and women, what is the thing that people talk about the most? Their work. So it's fascinating. We talk about having this dividing line, this imaginary dividing line between work and home. And a lot of people say, well, I like to leave work at work. Well, most people don't. Most people can't wait to get home to talk about, can you believe this thing that happened to me at work? That's the vast majority of what friends talk about. I don't know if that's the healthiest thing, but maybe venting, blowing off a little bit of steam, asking for advice about how to deal with situations that might be at work, it could be healthy if it's that way. You don't want to be just stuck in this, relentless cycle of going to work and then coming home and talking about work. So that to the point that you're not enjoying the relationships that you have and the other things that could maybe take your mind out of work. So their work was important, family life was important, current events important, their physical health. Men are less likely. Men, 31% talked about physical health, women, 41%. Pop culture, TV, books, and all that stuff. Women are more likely, a little bit more likely to talk about that. And this is Pew Research Center stats, by the way. 37% for women, 32% for men. Big gap, as you might imagine, around sports. 37% of men talk about sports. 13% of women do. What's fascinating about that is in our relationships, husbands want to talk to their wives about sports. They humor us sometimes. Oh, really? Oh, that's interesting. Oh, I'm sorry your team lost. Or they'd rather talk about something else. Mental health. Women are, kudos to women, they're more likely to talk about their mental health, 31% to men, 15%. So women are twice as likely to talk about their mental health with their friends. We still need to get that number up. But it's just fascinating when you think about the types of things we talk about and think about your own friendships. The people that you're close to, what's the main thing that you all talk about? And is the main thing that you like to talk about, is that the main thing they like to talk about? If you write down the benefits of, a close friendship that you have, here is what I get the most out of this. Here are the top 3 to 5 benefits I get out of our friendship. And ask them to do the same. And I wonder how that list would look when you compare the two of those. You might be surprised. You might even be surprised at what you're getting if you've never really sat down to think about it. You might be surprised at how important these relationships are and why they're so important. So let's talk about what makes a good relationship. And I think for this one, yeah, let me ask you to do a little bit of a self-assessment. So I'm going to give you some quality, and I want you to rate yourself from 1 to 5 on these qualities as it pertains to the type of friend you are, right? The degree to which you demonstrate these qualities in your core group. So 1 is not at all. 5 is exceptionally well. I do this thing exceptionally well. So the first category is trust. How well do you demonstrate trust? Something to this. Put another column beside that How well do you trust your core group? This is your core group of friends. Or pick one for how well do you trust that person? And how well do you demonstrate that you're trustworthy? Okay. The next category is communication. Communication. So, how effective are you at communicating? Are you open and honest and transparent? Do you say all the things that you want to say? On the other hand, with your friend, is your friend a good communicator? Do they demonstrate active listening, when you're telling them something? Do you demonstrate active listening? Rate yourself and the other person on that. The next category is empathy. How well do you demonstrate empathy? One, not at all. I can't connect, which probably not a core group if that's the case. And five is, yeah, I'm there. I really make an effort to do that, and I'm always present in understanding what my friend is going through. And then again, rate that person. The next category is support. How often are you encouraging, uplifting, supporting, challenging your friend? And how much support are you receiving on the other side? Mutual respect. How often do you demonstrate, or how well do you demonstrate respect for the person that you're thinking about now? How often do they demonstrate respect for you? So, to what degree is that relationship mutually respectful? Authenticity. How authentic are you? How real are you with the person that you're thinking about? How real are they with you? Honesty. I could have put this one first. Of course, it's connected, it's part of trust. But how honest are you? How much do you hold back? How honest, how free are you to say what it is you need to say? How honest do you think they are with you? Uh, Here's one that we don't think about: boundary. Do you have boundaries? And if you have boundaries, do you respect them? You have your core friend, but then you have your family. How sometimes there's a conflict, right? Sometimes there is an issue between, particularly a spouse and a friend that you might have, and setting appropriate boundaries. And fun. How much fun do you have with this friend of yours? Is it taxing? Is it hard work to be with them? Do you have to work hard to try to have fun? Or is it natural? Do you have to go and do something special for it to be fun? Or can you just sit there and, watch a movie or watch television, or just sit there and talk or have a phone conversation and find yourself smiling and laughing? Because remember the health benefits of of smiling and releasing those endorphins and all that stuff. So how fun is it? Or is it just a whole lot of work, and therefore it's not that much fun? It's interesting because sometimes we have these relationships and we have them because we have had them. I used to watch Leave It to Beaver growing up. That was my show. And there was a character on Leave It to Beaver, Eddie Haskell, the Beaver's older brother, Wally. Wally's best friend was Eddie Haskell. And Eddie was a lousy cat. He was a sneaky cat. He was not, you couldn't trust him. He was selfish. He was always in for himself. He was not a good cat in many ways. And I remember one episode that Wally's parents, well, you know what? If he's like this, why are you friends with him? Like, why do you spend this time with him? And Wally looked confused. He was like, because he's my best friend. Period. So he's my best friend. So he's going to be my best friend, without stepping back to really explore what that relationship is, what the impact of that relationship is on the two of you, on the people around you. It's just fascinating. I remember being a little kid, like, man, why is he hanging out with this dude? So do we have some Eddie Haskells in our lives, or do we have people who think that we are more like Eddie Haskell? Something to think about. Listen, I hope that you're taking this stuff to heart. Relationships are really, really important. I can't tell you how many times over the years I've heard people say things like, oh, I don't care about what anybody thinks of me. I don't need anybody. I'm independent. I'm on my own. All the evidence suggests the contrary. Relationships are critical. Genuine relationships are critical. They impact on a physical level whether or not we get sick, how long we stay sick, whether or not we overcome that sickness, how long we live and the quality of our life while we're here. From a psychological standpoint, how do I think of myself? What kind of chemicals are being released? What's the impact on me and how I see myself in the world and how I process things, right? From a biological standpoint, the genes that are turned on and turned off by association with this core group of people. All this stuff is real. Study after study only reinforces what we already know. Relationships are critical. So take time to invest in those relationships. Let me give you one last challenge before we say goodbye for this episode. I want you to think about somebody that you have not connected with in a long time, a decade or more. Find them. We can find anybody now. Go out to social media, see if you can find them. Just reach out. Reach out to say hi, to check in with them. Life goes fast. And before you know it, 5 years go by, 10 years go by, 20 years go by, and we lose these really important relationships that we had at some point in our lives. So that's your homework. Find someone that you haven't talked to in a long time, that you've had a positive relationship with. Check in with them. Let them know how you're doing. It'll be good for their health. It'll be good for your health. Until next episode, don't let culture, cost, or convenience ruin your health. Thanks for joining me for this episode of Healthy and Black. I'm your host, Dr. Jarek Conrad. If you have feedback on today's episode, please email info@jarekconrad.com. I'd love to hear from you. Don't forget to visit jarekconrad.com to subscribe to my blog. Thanks for listening. Please tell your friends about the podcast. Until next time, don't let culture, cost, or convenience ruin your health.